discussion on the official podcast for the Grand Prix. We had a chance to see a lot of the guys out on track yesterday. We talk a lot about corner one, right? Because that's where most of the action is going to happen. But these cars coming out of that complex at the end on the north side of the track, 10, 11, 12, we saw a lot of guys get sideways yesterday. They're laying that power down. That car wants to snap around. It was fantastic watching yesterday. So I'm excited to see what happens today.
Yeah, not only do we have practice with it, we got to watch the driver.
Looking to get the win here in tough conditions. Trying to get a feel for where they needed to be. You'll see the big guys go to the top, but I think there's going to be some names that could potentially work their way forward because it's a brand new track for everybody.
So we're familiar with how IndyCar qualifies. Tell us how USF2000 qualifies. Anything different there? I know we have the Firestone Fast 12, Firestone Fast 6. What are we looking at with Indy Pro 2000?
That's the big difference, right? We don't do that kind of a setup for us. Our drivers, essentially, it's 20 minutes of guaranteed green flag running for the drivers in qualifying. What we'll normally see during that, it's a 30-minute session, so they get that 20 minutes. What we'll normally see is drivers come out with a set of used tires, get a feel for the track because they haven't been on the track since yesterday. It's obviously changed a little bit. They've made some adjustments, and then midway through the session, they'll come in, they'll put on fresh Cooper tires, and that's when the drivers will have to go for their best lap. The fuel's going down, cars getting lighter. They'll have to make sure they hit it right when the tires come up to the right operating temperature, and then they have to make sure they're on the racetrack with nobody in front of them that could slow them up. So there's a lot of stuff that is involved in the equation of turning a fast lap.
Right, so everybody's on track at the same time.
It's an all skate for sure, yeah.
I love that form of qualifying because it really brings out the best in people. And honestly, it brings out the worst in people because if you're on a hot flyer lap and some guy pulls out into your line that's going a few miles an hour slower, like you're either going to have to gamble, go around him and hope you can maintain that fast lap time, or you have to back off and try it again.
And it plays a bit to the team as well, right? When you release your guy from pit lane, you may hold him to find out where the other guys are on the racetrack, right? They might have a spotter out there saying, okay, let's go from here, because you need to have that gap. Like you said, you need to know who's around you. You kind of need to know their speed and how they run. There's a lot of strategy and a lot of knowledge that plays to qualifying. Understanding that you need to have that flyer lap. You can't get behind someone in some of these longer duration corners where you lose the air off the front wing, and all of a sudden you got the aero wash, the mid-corner understeer. That's when you start pushing those front tires, and you lose a bit. And that's the thing about our series. So let's say from first back to 15th is going to be 6 or 7 tenths of a second. So if you lose a tenth, you can go from potentially 7th back to 17th.
That is just insane to me. I mean, it's so close. We're getting ready to get these guys out on the track. Rob will join us here in just a few more minutes. He will have your action for the Road to Indy Series, USF 2000, Indy Pro 2000, as we get through the course of today, tomorrow, and then, of course, we have the NTT IndyCar Series race on Sunday. The Indy Lights guys will go out early there. We will have to talk about that points battle as well because there's just so many storylines across the board. It doesn't matter what series you're watching. There's so much going on I'm excited. I know you two gentlemen are excited. It's going to be a great weekend, and no rain.
No rain. It's going to be beautiful today. What a great weekend it's going to be.
Oh, my gosh. It is absolutely gorgeous. We're getting you guys ready for USF2000 here at Portland International Raceway. It's qualifying. We have 4 races today. There is not a gap longer than 15 minutes of a car not on the track. That is awesome. Sit in. You can sit anywhere you want with a GA ticket today. So pick out a spot, enjoy it, or walk around the entire track. It is great. Let's hand it off to our friends with USF2000. Getting you ready for qualifying coming up here in just a little bit.
It is a beautiful day here in Portland, Oregon, as we get set to roll off with the finale weekend of the Road to Indy presented by Cooper Tires. My name is Rob Howden. Those of you joining us trackside, thanks for coming out here early. You may be tuning into the Road to Indy TV app or the Road to Indy TV YouTube channel. We thank you for following the action throughout this entire 2022 season, and indeed, we're going to cap it off here. We've got scholarship money up for grabs in both USF2000 and Indy Pro. Of course, Indy Lights not capping off until they get to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in a couple of weeks. But the first 2 rungs of the Road to Indy, we'll know who the champions are, maybe even by the end of today. In Indy Pro 2000, Louis Foster with an almost insurmountable lead. Really only needs to start all 3 races to score the championship. He could have an opportunity to lock it down after race number 1 early this afternoon. But right now, the Cooper Tires USF 2000 drivers rolling onto the racetrack for their 30-minute qualifying session to, of course, set the grids for all 3 races. And that's kind of an interesting setup. The fastest lap of this session will set the grid for race number 1. Second fastest lap for race number 2 and race number 3. Although the drivers, if they're able to go quicker in race number 1, they can use that lap for race 2. And similarly, if they go faster in race number 2, they can use that lap for race number 3. So setting the grid up right now for race number 1 of the 2 that we'll have today. Triple header for the Cooper Tires USF 2000 Championship. A great field, 20 drivers total. We've got some newcomers here this weekend as well. Lucas Mann running for Turn 3 Motorsports. Ethan Ho, one of our USF junior drivers, jumping up to run here as well with VRD Racing. So great to have some young drivers coming up from the USF Juniors program, our development series that we launched here in 2022 to feed drivers in to USF 2000 in 2023 and beyond. A brand new race car next year for USF Juniors, the Tatis JR23, essentially a developmental version of our USF 2000 race car. But a great field here, as we said. The championship unbelievably tight in this category. Cooper Tires USF 2000. 3 drivers coming in with a mathematical chance at going for the championship. Miles Rowe with a 23-point lead over Michael D'Orlando and a 25-point lead over his teammate Jace Denmark. Those 3 drivers with an opportunity to score the championship, which would give them a scholarship of over $406,000 to move to Indy Pro 2000 in 2023. Challenging racetrack for sure here at Portland. 1.964 miles, 12 turns, and the last 3 being unbelievably tough. That's them coming through here right now, the 10, 11, 12 combination. You got to get the car to roll, get it rotated coming through turn 11, get it pointed in the right direction, roll back on the throttle. The quicker you're on the throttle, the longer you make the front straightaway into one of the most, probably one of the toughest opening quarter complexes in all of American motorsports coming through the Festival Chicane. It'll be very exciting coming down to this corner here when we go racing, especially with that much money and championships on the line. A couple guys will be joining me here in the booth for the broadcast here of the Road to Indy. Bobby Corser, we had a chance to have a podcast interview earlier in the week. I love the podcast for the event. I think that's an amazing thing to do for the fans, give them a feel for everything that's going on. But this is going to be some great racing. This is the very start of it. This is where they start going to IndyCar.
It is, and it is fantastic. We talked about the ladder series. We talked a lot on the podcast about that scholarship because that really is the key to the next level. These guys are going to have to go out and find sponsorships with them. This eases that burden, and if it's one less thing that a guy's got to worry about, he can focus now getting behind the wheel and being successful in the next one. So that's super important. Guys are out on the track already. It is a gorgeous day. A little bit of marine clouds are already burning off. Temperatures are headed up into the 90s. I don't know if there's anything better you could ask for at PIR. There's no rain, and that is fantastic. So
Indeed. And this is just going to be a great way to cap off our season here for 2022. We mentioned a little bit about the scholarship, over $400,000. And indeed, it does help. It'll help some drivers with, getting the money they need. But for some, it's really their only opportunity.
Absolutely.
We'll talk about Kyle Kirkwood later on this weekend, obviously running for AJ Foyt Racing, his last 2 races with them before moving to Andretti Autosport next year. Coming into our program, he did not have the money to be able to move forward. They just didn't have the family money. He would have had to work hard to find sponsorship, but he won the championship in USF2000 as a rookie. Gets a scholarship, goes to Indy Pro, wins the championship as a rookie. Goes to Indy Lights, wins the championship as a rookie. He's a generational talent, but if it wasn't for the scholarship program where he has won over $2.5 million, there's no way Kyle Kirkwood's going to be able to go IndyCar racing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, Phil Martelli is going to join us. He is my co-host here for the PA. And, Phil, we talked about that as well. You got to have the money to make the jump. You got to have the money to be able to sit in the car and drive. So it is fantastic, and we're so glad that this opportunity exists.
And that's great having the scholarships. That's so much undifferent compared to NASCAR. There's no scholarships when you go from Xfinity to Cup or from Truck to Xfinity. That's why this program is so great and why IndyCar is so successful.
Yeah, Phil, it's actually unparalleled around the world. Obviously you said it's not in the NASCAR world either, but it's not even in European racing as well. Really, the only scholarships you're going to get is more being part of one of the manufacturer academies, whether it's Ferrari or Red Bull or Alpine or something like that, where they support young drivers coming up because they want them with their team eventually, right, with the opportunity to potentially run in their F1 seat. This is more purely philanthropic to try to help these drivers, give them what they need from Anderson Promotions to be able to keep moving forward. And for us, you'll hear us talk about it all the time when we go to the Indianapolis 500, anywhere but from 22 to 26 drivers, of the 33 that start the 500 come from the road to Indy, right? From Joseph Newgarden to Pato to Felix to Rinus VK, Connor Daly. You just go through the entire grid. They all kind of work their way through here as they develop, coming up the horsepower levels, everything they do through the road to Indy.
Real quick here, so for people that are going to be watching today, you're going to see the USF2000 car and you're going to see the Indy Pro 2000 car. They look very similar. What are the differences?
Here's the great thing. They both have exactly the same basis. They have the same chassis. The monocoque tub from Tatis is exactly the same. For the USF2000 car, minimal downforce. We create a lot more of the downforce from the actual mechanical grip. That allows them to follow closer. You don't get that aero wash as we talk about, right? The understeer when you lose the air off the front wing. It still happens, but not as much. When you go to Indy Pro, I like to say that it's more of everything.
Gotcha.
It goes from 170 horsepower to 250. Bigger tires, more downforce, more braking capability. It's just more of everything. At a track like here in Portland with the 2 longer straightaways, it's probably going to be 3 or 4 seconds faster. In Road America, where it's a lot longer straightaways, it's about 6 seconds quicker. So it's it's that kind of calculated move forward, giving them a little bit more of everything. And then, of course, Indy Lights, almost double the horsepower. You do double it with the push to pass. 450 to 500 horsepower for Indy Lights with push to pass.
Fantastic.
Wow. Right?
I love watching the video that we have out here on the screen. Of course, they're busy qualifying right now. 22 minutes left of guaranteed track time. The shot when they are coming down that front straightaway, the sun is just high enough in the road. It's, reflecting off, and we'll see it here in a second. It looks cool.
It does.
I mean, it looks cool. And that's the big thing that we are seeing, guys, locking up. Like that view right there. Look at that. That looks cool. That screams to me, early morning, we're out here burning some rubber. Let's get this done. What a great way to kick off the series.
And we always talk about the guys in our category. We call them the dew sweepers, right? Yep. Because they're the first guys out on the racetrack. A little bit of a mist maybe from a kind of a dewy morning. They're the first drivers out on track, so they got to be smart. They're the youngest guys, but we put them into the toughest pressure situation. Don't throw it off because, again, in this situation, build the tire temperature up slowly. You're going to get a feel for the race car. You made changes after yesterday, right? You tested all day. We had a final practice. You got a feel for the way the car was. You spent an hour in the debrief room talking to your engineers. What are we going to change? Aerodynamics, suspension, geometry, whatever it may be. This is their first chance to feel it. Now they'll come into pit lane. They'll be able to talk to their engineers. I'd like a little bit more of this. We put the fresh rubber on. You'll probably see that. We're only, not even 10 minutes into the session. Midway through, you're going to see these drivers come into pit lane. They're using a set of what's called carryover tires. So these are tires from an earlier race in the season. So they're not out here on fresh tires right now. They'll be able to go to fresh tires after the session. Here we go. A number of drivers coming into pit lane right now. Fastest driver on the racetrack is Nikita Johnson from VRD Racing. 4th place currently in points in our USF Junior Series. He'll move to USF2000 next year. Did a test over in Europe last couple of weeks to kind of dial more speed in for himself. He's only 15 years of age out of Florida.
Wow.
A very talented young driver we look forward to seeing next year. Miles Rowe up into second right now. He's your current point leader in the Pabst Racing number 22, the Force Indy liveried machine. Chase Denmark, his teammate, now P3. Thomas DeVoe from Canada for D-Force Racing in 4th. And Jacob Douglas, one of the 2 Kiwis, our New Zealand drivers in the field for Exclusive Autosport. He's on into the Fast 5. You see only 0.3 of a second separating the top 5 right now. And as I said, look at the top 16. Less than a second for the top 16 as drivers, a number of them now into pit lane to go to fresh tires.
Rob, let's go back to the 15 years old. What is the minimum age to get into one of these?
So for USF 2000, you have to be 14 years of age. Not 14 that year, but 14. For our USF Junior Series, you can start the season at 13, but sometime during the season, you have to have turned 14. So this is what you're seeing right now, right? You kind of pull off a little bit of the Max Verstappen going right from F3, to F1 at 16 years of age, 17 years of age. Even in karting these days, you're seeing the drivers in the senior categories 14 years of age, 15. So we're kind of moving everything younger, and these drivers are mature. They've done so much testing. We're seeing a lot of drivers 14, 15 years of age.
It is crazy because we do sprint cars up here in the Northwest. As a matter of fact, the World of Outlaws are up here right now in the Northwest. 14 is the minimum age for to get into a 360, but to get into a 410 sprint car, you got to be 16 now due to insurance. And
I understand that completely. Yeah,
they're getting so young now,
and it's such a hot rod to drive. Let's be real.
Yep.
I kind of put the parallel of World of Outlaws with IndyCar, right? This is the top level of sprint car racing, and indeed, you can't be a 16-year-old driver in IndyCar. So I understand that completely. We're doing our best at this level. These kids want to go racing, so we bring them into our program, and it's not just about driving the race car, right? We really work with them inside the car, outside the car. We have our own driver coaches that are part of the series as well. All of them have their own driver coaches. We do a lot of training with media as well, social media, fitness training, everything we're doing to try to get these guys prepared to work their way up the ladder.
Is there anywhere, you mentioned the gentleman is 15 years old. Do you see anybody jumping from, say, Indy Pro 2000 into either going to Europe to a higher class, or somebody that's going to jump maybe from Indy Lights immediately into an NTT IndyCar series within a year?
Yeah, you know what? Yes, you can see that. Obviously, Kyle Kirkwood did it, right? He went straight to Indy Lights and moved up. David Malukas did a couple of years and moved up. This year, no. I don't think there's any of the rookies this year that are planning on moving next year to IndyCar. We know that Hunter McElroy just announced yesterday that he will be back again with Andretti Autosport for his second year of Indy Lights. Linus Lundqvist, of course, with an opportunity to clinch the championship this weekend. If he does so, I hope we see him in IndyCar next year. But he's another one of those drivers, really. He does not have the money. He doesn't have the backing he needs to be able to go to IndyCar. He's going to use this scholarship as a tryout to potentially get a couple of races in IndyCar next year. I hope somebody picks him up because I think Linus is one of those talents we could see for the next decade in the NTT IndyCar series.
I agreed with you, and we were talking when we did our podcast that if he wins the championship, which is very likely he will this year, he'll use that money next year. He's guaranteed a number of drives, not a full season, but at least a couple entries into the NTT IndyCar series.
I don't think it's actually locked down with exactly what he gets, but in the past, it has essentially been 3 races, including the Indianapolis 500. About $1 million, $1.2 million is I think what was usually the number. So it gives them that 3 races. They usually run St. Petersburg. They'll run the first couple of races. They normally try to run the road course race at Indianapolis and the 500 as well. But in recent past, we've seen champions like Pato O'Ward and Kyle Kirkwood get signed to full-year deals, because the bottom line is this: everybody's now looking for that next guy. You got to find that next superstar, whether it's Colton Herta or Pato O'Ward. There are, I'm sure, a lot of team owners that are kind of beating their heads that they didn't sign Pato O'Ward when they could, because he's a guy that's going to battle for championships for the next decade. He'll be the next kind of run behind Joseph Newgarden, and he and the whole Arrow McLaren team obviously lining up to potentially win a bunch of titles.
That story in itself is fantastic.
Indeed.
To see Arrow McLaren come back into the sport, and we obviously see what they do across the pond in F1, but it is a great story. And I guarantee you there are plenty of team owners out there being like, oh man, And again,
Well, it's the same with Ed Carpenter, right?
Oh, absolutely.
So Ed Carpenter, Renus VK, of course, was a top guy. Finished second in the championship to Oliver Askew a number of years ago on Indy Lights, and he ended up with Ed Carpenter. Well, Ed's looking at Renus saying he's in his coming into his fourth year. Who's going to sign him? Is Ganassi looking at him? Is Andretti? Is Penske? And Ed said, I got to lock this kid down. Because he's, again, another driver you're going to see for the next couple of decades, right? So Carpenter said, hey, listen, we need our future. Let's lock Renus down again. So a contract extension there. When you have talent, you can't let it go because everybody's fighting for the best drivers they can.
And we see it. There's a reason why they call it silly season, because it is.
But Kyle Busch is looking for a ride right now.
There it is.
Same thing.
Maybe we'll see him in the 500 next year.
Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
His brother did it.
Hey,
Yes,
I
he
would
did.
love to see Kyle Busch in the 500. I think it would be fantastic. Anytime that we can get a driver for another series that comes over, I mean.
Yeah, but who do you really want first? I want to see Kyle Larson.
Oh, yeah,
I want
absolutely.
to see Kyle Larson.
Absolutely.
Get in line for that
Yeah,
one.
right. All right, let's jump back into this right now. 112.271 fast time here so far for Nikita Johnson for VRD Racing. Not sure whether or not he's been into pit lane as of yet, but he is now just a tenth and a half quicker than Christian Weir for Turn 3 Motorsport, the Illinois driver, the number 32, coming to the end of his rookie season. And I will mention this. There are a number of rookies, obviously, in the program, but by the time we get to the end of the season, they've already got 7 races under their belt. They're not really rookies anymore. They're essentially rolling into their second year. So really more of a level playing field, especially coming to a race here in Portland where none of these USF2000 drivers have ever raced here in this car. So it's been since 2019, since USF2000 has been on the docket here at the Grand Prix of Portland, and that equates to 6 drivers in Indy Pro 2000 who were here back in 2019. Everybody else brand new to this very challenging track. You'll see a number of drivers kind of swerving back and forth a little bit, trying to bring those sticker Cooper tires up to temperature to be ready to roll one out here now. 14 and a half minutes remaining in this 30-minute session. Time to go, though, I believe 4 minutes and 24 on that 20-minute clock. Maximum 20 minutes of green time within that 30-minute session. So if we do get the 20 minutes done, we'll call this session done. So have a look at what we're going to see now. Drivers starting to dial things in. Miles Rowe, your championship leader, goes to P1 with a 111.940. And I think one of the key things for Rowe is there is a bonus point for qualifying on the pole. He's 23 points ahead of Michael D'Orlando, who currently sits P3. Nikita Johnson still second, Christian Weir in fourth, and Thomas Naveau fifth. Nicky Hayes rounding up your top 6 at this point. Joey Brienza, a rookie who will run just one race this weekend to preserve his rookie status for next year. He's inside the top 10, as is his teammate Billy Fraser and Jacob Douglas. They're currently 8th, 9th, and 10th for Exclusive Autosport. Chase Denmark has gone to P2, so right now Pabst Racing first and second with Miles Rowe and Chase Denmark. Both those drivers, of course, in championship contention, but Miles Rowe coming in with a really strong championship lead of 23 points. He's had a tremendous season. He's been on the podium, I want to say 8 of the last 9 races, and the race he was off the podium was actually a 5th in Toronto in race number 2. So he's had a really strong run of consistent pushes towards the podium, a number of race wins in there, 2 race wins in those 8, or 3 race wins rather, in those 8 events. And that's what's given him this point lead coming into the season finale. A triple header for both the Cooper Tires USF2000 Championship and the Indy Pro 2000 Championship, presented by Cooper Tires. We'll have our banquet on Sunday evening. No on-track action. We're done on Saturday night, right before the ARCA event. So exciting to see these young drivers working their way up through the career. Many of these drivers here will move to Indy Pro 2000 in 2022, following in the footsteps of drivers, as I had said, like Kyle Kirkwood, Renus VK, Oliver Askew. Rowe up now by just 0.04 of a second from his teammate Chase Denmark. 2.5 minutes remaining on the 20-minute clock as we've been able to go green throughout the entire session thus far. Rowe, Denmark, Naveau, Johnson, and Hayes now your top 5. Weir 6th, D'Orlando back to 7th. Billy Fraser 8th, Matt Clark 9th, and Joey Brienza 10th. Matt Clark, what a great story. Point leader in the USF Juniors category right now. He will go for the championship, a fight versus Alessandro De Tullio and Sam Corey at the Circuit of the Americas in 2 weeks' time in Austin, Texas. A $200,000 scholarship up for grabs for Clark to move to USF 2000. But he was able to get a program put together with D-Force Racing to sample this USF 2000 program. And he was in the top 10 all day yesterday in testing, currently sitting 9th. The driver out of Campbellville, Ontario, Canada, right close to Toronto. Canadian trying to follow in the footsteps of James Hinchcliffe and other great drivers we've seen come out of Canada. They'll be one to watch in 2023 for sure. Rowe still on top, though, 0.04 of a second over his teammate, and Denmark now goes to P1. His teammate pips him by 0.08 of a second. Oh, a bonus point for Denmark would start the day off. And remember, a good first lap probably means a good second lap, which means very likely you're going to be starting up front in all 3 races. 2 races today, 1 tomorrow. Denmark, Neveu, Rowe, Johnson, and Hayes, as Thomas Neveu has now put his D-Force number 10 up into second. Another young Canadian driver out of the province of Quebec. Thomas Neveu, incredibly talented. Rowe, Johnson, and Hayes. Nicky Hayes having a really good run. Quickest of the Cape Motorsports drivers. Final season in USF2000 for Cape Motorsports before they move up into Indy Lights next year. Nikita Johnson again up into second for VRD Racing. He is making a statement for him battling potentially for a championship next year. He might, I'd say he's 15. He might only be 14. I'm not sure if he's even turned 15 years of age. And we've seen a number of drivers like that. We'll talk more about it throughout the weekend. But a number of drivers running in Indy Pro 2000 started at 14. Nolan Siegel, as well, Jack William Miller, Maurice Gold. Were all 14 when they first came into USF 2000. We've watched them mature throughout the last couple of years into race winners. Denmark still on top. Checkered flag will fly now. We've locked the time down of the 20 minutes, so we'll see the checkered flag here soon, I would believe. Yep, indeed, checkered flag coming out. Green to checker for 20 minutes. Great job by our drivers to be able to get a clean session in, but Denmark still on top. Everybody on this final lap flyer, though, to bring it home. Denmark, Johnson, Neveu, Rowe, and Hayes, and for Jace Denmark, the key is to get every point possible to see if he can't close himself up on Miles Rowe. Michael D'Orlando down in 9th. Not a good qualifying effort for D'Orlando, who had some issues yesterday, had to miss a session after a wreck. He is behind the 8 ball and trying to go for this championship. Jace Denmark, though, stepping up, coming off a win in the last race in Toronto. He has the momentum coming in, and right now holding on to P1. 800ths quicker than Nikita Johnson, the very impressive young Florida driver. Denmark, Johnson, Neveu, Rowe, and Hayes. We'll see if anybody else has anything here on the final circuit. Indy Pro 2000 qualifying to come up next. Louis Foster, of course, with an almost insurmountable lead there. If he wins, he clinches the championship in race number 1. To be honest, all he needs to do is finish in the top 11 for Louis Foster. Denmark across the line, no quicker, but it looks to me like he is going to be on the pole position. We'll see how it shakes out for race 2 and 3, but you got to expect with the pace he showed here for P1 qualifying in race 1, he's going to be up front for the remainder of the weekend. Jace Denmark, a 1:11.833. Nikita Johnson in 2nd. Thomas Neveu in 3rd. Miles Rowe 4th. Nicky Hayes in 5th. And there you have it, Bobby. Drivers stepping up, and it was the guy 3rd in points right now. Jace Denmark grabbing another bonus point. He's now only 24 points back.
That is fantastic. You mentioned the fact that we would start to see these lap times really kind of stack up, and we did. We had the lead change, the top 7 times. I'm counting here in the last 30 seconds. So you saw that happen, and what a great run, though. Denmark, fantastic. Again, the bonus point is crucial. Now, you mentioned earlier that they could use a lap time from race 2 toward race 3 and from 1 toward 2. Explain really how that works if we're trying to set the field.
So let's say that Denmark here set 2 fast times. He has a 1:11.83, and I think his last one was a 1:11.89. So he's got 2 1:11.8s. When we head into race number 1, if a driver turns a faster lap than that, they can use that lap for race number 2 instead of their second fastest lap for qualifying.
Cool.
And that happens occasionally because, remember, IndyCar has not gone out here yet, so there's a limited amount of grip. When IndyCar does go out, some tracks yes, some tracks no, we may pick up some grip. We could pick up some speed. It all depends on the racetrack, the temperature you talked about. Some tracks are a bit different. Sometimes it goes slower. Sometimes it's really hot, and it gets kind of greasy as opposed to getting faster. We'll see if anybody ever goes quicker. Oftentimes, too, you'll see somebody further down in the field that potentially rolls the dice, comes in mid-race, throws a set of stickers on to try to go out and get a faster lap to move themselves up the grid. We see that happen occasionally. It's a strategic move. You give up one race to start better in the second race.
Nah,
So, yeah.
I think that's a fantastic way to do things because it keeps fans engaged, one.
Indeed.
And two, it's a more strategy, right? Yeah, you can gamble and say, hey, maybe this race isn't going to work for us in the end, but we know we've already turned a really fast lap. It can increase our starting position once we get to 2, so that is fantastic.
Because this is kind of a track position track as well. It's
Absolutely.
not the easiest place to pass on, right? Turn 1, of course, being the best opportunity. So the further up you start, the better you have a chance at finishing on the podium. One interesting note to cap things off here as well, you can see the top 18 drivers within 0.8 of a second. That's how close it is. And the driver in 19th and 20th, those are the two rookies, 2 of the 3 rookies that are making their debut here in USF2000 this weekend. Ethan Ho and Lucas Mann, both those drivers just 1.1 and 1.2 seconds back, getting a feel for this race car, being here in the paddock of the Road to Indy. Imagine how kind of daunting it is to be here at an IndyCar weekend for these young drivers. They're enjoying themselves. Great experience ahead of a potentially running a full-time schedule in 2023.
Right, and by the time these guys get back on track for the first race, second race, third race, this track will be very well rubbered in.
That's exactly
There's
that.
no doubt about that. And again, 4 different series in addition to the NTT IndyCar series. There's going to be a lot of rubber on this track, and it's going to be fantastic. I think we will throw a lot of really, really fast lap times going forward.
Indeed. So we're still quite a ways away. 9:55 scheduled start time for qualifying for the Indy Pro 2000 drivers. Make sure if you're following here on the Road to Indy TV app or on our YouTube channel, make sure you come back. It's 9:55. The drivers in the second level of the Road to Indy will be going at it. Their first their single qualifying session for race 1, and then of course for race 2 and 3 lining up as well. We may see a champion coming there from Louis Foster. But again, don't go anywhere on Road to Indy TV, folks. We are underway here at this year's Grand Prix of Portland.
It's your Uncle Cooper. Sure, once in a blue moon, you might need your tires for hauling a horse in a hailstorm. But most days, you're gonna need your tires for tougher things, like teaching your sister's kid how to parallel park. Thankfully, these Cooper Enduro Maxes aren't just tough, they're everyday tough. Okay, there's a lot of improvement. Go with the Coopers. Cooper.
Karting and motorsport enthusiasts, Lucas Oil School of Racing is America's #1 Formula Car race school. Enjoy modern paddle shifters, pit speed limiter, and onboard video along with integrated data systems. Get started today with our 2-day basic or advanced course. Lucas Oil School of Racing is the official school of the Road to Indy. We can also qualify you for your SCCA license. Get started today by visiting us at www.lucasraceschool.com.
It's your Uncle Cooper. Your SUV is a multi-purpose tool, like a corkscrew fish scaler. And that means your tires should be multi-purpose too. Like these Cooper rugged Treks. They're tough, but also run smooth as butter. And with dual sidewalls, it's like having a multi-tool that can look like a completely different multi-tool. Don't take that idea, by the way. I'm gonna patent it. Go with the Coopers. Cooper.
With over 40 years in business, High Tide Boat Lifts is committed to elevating your craft. Whether you own a personal watercraft or a large yacht, we can design and create the perfect lift for your needs. At High Tide Boat Lifts, we understand that you've worked hard to get to a successful place in life. We'll ensure you have a hassle-free experience, maximizing the time you spend on your boat with family and friends, and supporting your dreams out on the open water.
It's your Uncle Cooper. If you and your truck are constantly tackling the regular duties of the day, go with a tire that can handle them all. Oh, man. I stepped in it. Go with the Coopers.
the first step on the road to Indy. This year's Grand Prix of Portland already underway as USF2000 has done qualifying. Jace Denmark from Pabst Racing getting a bonus point, crucial bonus point in his potential bid for the championship. And now it's time for the second rung, the Indy Pro 2000 Championship presented by Carryover Tires to take to this racetrack. Almost 2 miles of asphalt and concrete around this very challenging facility in the Pacific Northwest. Hello to those of you trackside. Hello to those of you tuning into the Road to Indy TV app or on our Road to Indy TV YouTube channel. My name is Rob Howden, the voice of this Road to Indy. Excited to be here in Portland. Love this racetrack. Love this area of the country as well. And our one trip west of the Mississippi, we've been to WeatherTech Raceway Laguna Seca in years past as well, but just a single run up here to the Pacific Northwest. And now the drivers in Indy Pro 2000 rolling out 15 strong in this category. Again, the drivers running the Tatis IP22 chassis. We rolled out a new chassis this year, kind of an updated center section of the car, the monocoque with the new halo on the car as well. So an increased level of safety for both USF2000 and Indy Pro for 2022. And we'll cap this 2022 season off this weekend here in Portland. Unlike USF2000, where 3 drivers in a fight for the championship, to be honest, in this one here, Louis Foster from Exclusive Autosport only needs to start all 3 races to secure the championship. If he's able to finish in front of Reese Gold and Nolan Siegel in race number 1 later on today or early in the afternoon, he'll secure that championship. Anything in the top 10 will get that championship as well. So the British driver Louis Foster will be one to watch in the Copart Exclusive Autosport machine. But to be honest, Reese Gold in the Hunkos Hollinger Racing machine has stepped it up. He was quickest in every session yesterday. The driver we watched come through the Road to Indy in USF 2000 started as a 14-year-old. It is actually his birthday today. So we'll say a happy birthday to Reese Gold, who's onto the racetrack now in that number 55 machine. Anam Ahmed, his teammate as well, lives in London, but born in Pakistan. And one of the messages we'll be trying to kind of pass out to everyone throughout this weekend is, of course, all the absolutely horrific flooding that's happening in Pakistan right now. The melting of some glaciers and a lot of water coming through there. Anam and I have had a couple of great conversations over the last couple of days. He will actually be leaving here from the track and heading right back to Pakistan to see if he can't help out with some of the efforts. Millions of people displaced from their homes. A large number have been killed with the flooding, including many of those that Anam knows personally. So this is something he's stepping up to try to support. I'll give you more information, but if you go to Anam Ahmed's, any of his social media channels, there's a link to the opportunity to a page that you can donate to try to help those in Pakistan. And we'll talk more about that throughout this weekend. But Anam, one of the drivers we've watched to come through the ranks, his first full season here on the road to Indy, a former British Formula 3 champion, a tremendous young man running for Hunkos Hollinger Racing. And again, looking for his first win of the season. Drivers just getting things underway. And just like we saw in the USF 2000 category, they'll roll out here on used tires, kind of dial things in from how good they did yesterday afternoon in the official practice session. Dial some changes into the car, get back out here for this particular session to go to work. Other drivers to watch, of course, as well. Nolan Siegel, like Reese Gold, along with Jack William Miller as well, all starting in USF 2000 at just 14 years of age. They all have significant time, 4 years in the Road to Indy so far, so we'll watch them step their way up through the ranks. Many of them looking to potentially move to Indy Lights next year. I know that's the goal for Reese Gold, to get into the Indy Lights program. Anam Ahmed's focusing on Indy Lights as well, as is Josh Green. Louis Foster, of course, will lock the championship up here potentially today, and he'll take the scholarship worth over $614,000 and get himself over into Indy Lights. So a number of drivers graduating up through this Road to Indy. Some starting all the way down in USF 2000, others coming in from other programs like Anam Ahmed and Louis Foster, who ran both British F3 and the Euro Formula Open Series. It's interesting for Louis Foster. Talk a little bit about his quick career, because really hasn't ever ran one series back-to-back years. He's run a series, sampled the next one, then jumped up every year. But in all 4 years running full-time series, he's finished in the top 3 in points. This will be his first point championship, but second or third in all 3 of the championships, whether it be Ginetta Juniors, running into the British Formula 4 Series, British Formula 3, and then Euro Formula Open. This guy has a ton of talent and has really been a revelation here in 2022 with Exclusive Autosport. Exclusive winning the team championship last year, but Michael and Kimberly Duncalf, the team owners, wanting that driver championship. You always want that driver championship, and it will come this year for that team with Louis Foster. Similarly in USF 2000, veteran team owner Augie Paps has won the team championship several times, but never the driver championship in USF 2000, and he is in a fight for that with both Miles Rowe and Jace Denmark. So a lot of milestones for teams here this weekend in Portland, and again, we'll dole out over $1 million, really over $1.1 million in scholarship money and prize money, championship prize money to the drivers when we have our championship celebration on Sunday evening. 3 laps into this session, and very exactly the same as USF 2000, guaranteed or not guaranteed. They'll get 20 green flag sessions, 20 minutes of green flag, in what will be a 30-minute window. Gold now on top, 2/10 quicker than Louis Foster, a 108.410, 108.4. Foster second, Anam Ahmed third, Josh Green fourth, Yuvan Sundarmurthy in fifth. Sundarmurthy in his first year, capping off his first year in Indy Pro 2000, a race winner in USF over the last couple of years. Jack William Miller in the Miller Vinatieri Motorsports, number 40, the red and white machine in sixth. Braden Eves, former USF 2000 champion, in seventh. Kiko Porto in eighth. Salvador De Alba in ninth, and Nolan Siegel in 10th. Salvador De Alba coming off a dominant performance at Worldwide Technology Raceway in St. Louis just a couple of weeks ago, moving himself up into 7th place in points with that victory, his second win of the season, coming off a rough weekend in Toronto where he finished 14th on both races. Great comeback for him, and with still an outside shot potentially, and working his way into the top 3 in points. And it's all going to see how things play out over the first 2 races today. Triple header for Indy Pro 2000, just like USF 2000. 2 races today and 1 tomorrow. So we'll see how things play out. Reese Gold up top right now by 0.04 of a second, Bobby, over Louis Foster. And as we said, USF 2000, we just saw them on track, 170 horsepower. We'll pile 80 more horsepower on these machines, 250 horsepower total. A lot more downforce, a lot more braking capability, and bigger tires as well. Just more of everything for these race cars.
You got to love it. More of everything is always a good thing.
That's it.
Well, I'll say this, maybe, most of the time. But you're right. It's fantastic to watch these cars and watch these guys develop as a driver, be able to step into an Indy Pro 2000 car and just have that increase, because that's where you're going to start learning that, how to handle your car overall, and the leaps that you take from, USF to Indy Lights, then to the NTT IndyCar Series is something that is really important, because these guys have to understand how these cars work.
This is a calculated process. It's not like we've come up with the race cars and said, hey, maybe this will work this way. The idea is to come up with everything. Your horsepower level goes up, top speed, cornering, braking, everything's increasing. You can't come out of karting and go right into IndyCar, right? It's developing your skills, developing all that mental knowledge. And the funny thing is, one of the other things, and of course you expect race car drivers to be fit, but you and I could drive a USF 2000 car. Phil, we can get a USF 2000 car, bang on some bucks, but you could do it. But then you move up to the next level, and the fitness level you need. And I love talking to the kids. They'll come out of USF 2000. They're 14 to 17 years of age. Yeah, I work out. When you were a kid, you were skinny. Everything was fine. It was good, right? Well, you jump up to Indy Pro 2000. No, there's no power steering. It's a heavier wheel. You're hard on the brakes into the corners, right? So then they're like, wow, I had to raise my game up. We'll talk to them. I had to raise my game up in my fitness. And I'll say to them, you better double that right now, because next you're going into a 450 horsepower Indy Lights car with turbo, way more downforce. And even with those drivers that think they're fit, where they're at pit potentially in Indianapolis, they think they're fit, and then they go to IndyCar. And they're like, I had no idea how hard it was. And every level, not only is it more horsepower, downforce, and you name it, the physical exertion, what it takes to actually drive these cars at the limit, that's the big thing as well. And that's when we see growth with these kids as well.
Well, Bobby, I'm going to have to work on my fitness before I get in one of those cars.
You and me both. Yes. Let's talk about Pit Fit, though. You brought that up in Indianapolis. What a cool program. For those of you that don't know what it is, it's a gentleman that opened a gym that is focused on the fundamentals of racing, not just drivers, but crews. So a lot of the workouts they do are tailored to, if you're a crew member, changing tires, moving things around in a fast pace, hand-eye coordination. Drivers, strengthening your neck, strengthening your core, arms, legs. It's really a kind of a cool thing, and we've seen this, it hasn't been around forever. It's within the last 5 to 10 years. So that's a very important step, isn't it?
Yeah, Jim Leo has got a real focused program. He's been around the sport for many, many years. He's worked with a bunch of drivers and then kind of started rolling in with Pit Fit, and it really, over the last 5 years, as you said, has really taken off because people can see it, right? You'll see it on social media. That's where Scott Dixon is, Tony Kanaan, James Hinchcliffe. So many drivers in Indianapolis spend time at Pit Fit because it really is motorsports-centric, focused driver development. You don't, let's be real, you're not pounding out a bunch of squats because you don't need huge quads to be able to drive a race car, but the neck exercises, you mentioned the hand-eye coordination and the reaction times, and a lot of the stuff they do is to make sure that you can perform for that hour and a half it takes to run an IndyCar race at the highest level, because these guys are 160 to 170 heartbeats all race long, right? And not only the drivers, but you mentioned the crew members as well. Jim puts on a fantastic deal. I'm actually going to be racing at a major karting event this year, and I'm going to Jim. We're going to sit down. He's got a program. He said, this is what you're going to do. We're going to get you ready to be able to drive in that race at the end of the season.
That's going to be fantastic. That karting event you speak of, it is the go-to thing. It's funny, you listen to a different bunch of guys that I've talked to from the NTT IndyCar series of drivers, and they all say, yeah, off-season is great, but we look forward to Vegas.
They do. It's called the Supercars USA Super Nationals. So last year, Will Power and Joseph Newgarden both came. Will be back this year. James Hinchcliffe is trying to put a program together. You think about the people that we've had who are professional drivers who come back to their roots, right? Because karting really is the roots.
Absolutely.
Michael Schumacher was there and came and ran one year, ran top 10 in the pro shifter kart category. Jamie McMurray. We've had Sebastian Bourdais. Who else am I thinking of? I said Daniel Weldon came many, many years before he passed away. Daniel loved karting. We've had so many great drivers. Alexander Rossi came and run as well. And Connor Daly's done it a couple times. Sage Karam. It's just one of those things you want to be able to do. And you look at the young kids we've had, if you're a Formula One fan, George Russell, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc all ran that race because it's one of the biggest races in the world. It's in Las Vegas, and big money to win as well.
Absolutely. And you got to love it. Anytime that, you can get the big drivers across all disciplines coming together to run a race and compete, it's great. Not only is it great, ego boost for those guys, as a fan, you get to see your favorite drivers compete against each other on the level playing field. You're not seeing the NTT IndyCar series on the same track with an F1 thing, or you're not seeing a NASCAR, go up against F1 or IndyCar. So really is really cool.
I will tell you this. It's normally not an ego boost for those guys because they come back and try to run against the kids. The people that are karters full time, they get their ass handed to them sometimes. They really get kicked pretty good. And literally last year, Will Power and Joseph Newgarden tried to run in the senior category, which is drivers 14 to about 20 years of age. And those kids are in the kart all the time. They got beat up pretty good. They'll probably run in the Masters class this year for drivers 30 years of age and older because it is tough, man. The top levels of karting, these kids are essentially pro drivers. They're in the kart all the time. They're in fantastic shape. And you think about an IndyCar where that seat fits you perfectly and you got to be strong, but a go-kart will beat you around in a big way.
You talk about that, and going back to even like I was watching Junior the other day come back and run a late model race.
Yeah.
These kids beat him. He can't. He's too old. These young kids are the way they go now.
Let's get back to the action here right now with about 6.5 minutes remaining. They've put the fresh rubber on. You can see a number of drivers coming out of pit lane here right now. Reese Gold currently in pit lane. Kiko Porto, last year's USF2000 champion, is into pit lane. Anam Ahmed, Bijoy Garg, who's one of our USF2000 drivers, who's jumped up here to Indy Pro for the last 2 races of the season. Number of drivers into pit lane. Reese Gold, though, still with the fastest lap time, a 1:08.384, but he's only 35 thousandths of a second quicker than Louis Foster. Kiko Porto in that lap jumping up into 3rd spot. Nolan Siegel runs in 4th. 5th is Anam Ahmed. There's your top 5. Yuban Sundaramurthy in 6th. Jack William Miller 7th. Salvador De Alba 8th. Bijoy Garg 9th. And Josh Green in 10th. We mentioned during the qualifying session for USF 2000, completely level playing field for all those drivers because none of them have been on this track since these 2 categories were here back in 2019. Of course, we weren't here in 2020 for COVID. Last year in 2021, just with Indy Light. So this is the first time. In Indy Pro, though, of the 15, 6 of them ran USF 2000 back in 2019. Reese Gold being one of them. As well, Nolan Siegel, Yuban Sundaramurthy, Jack William Miller, Josh Green, and Braden Eves all were on track here at Portland. So they do have a bit of a track time because, Bobby, this is not one of those tracks where guys are going to drive, the teams are going to come out to test at. They love the racetrack, but we're not driving, 2,000 miles to come to test here when you can test at a Mid-Ohio or a Putnam Park or an Audubon or something more close to where they're more centrally located to. So this really, that level playing field for especially USF2000, not so much here in Indy Pro.
Right, let's talk about this track too, and we'll get into it throughout the course of the weekend, but the way that this track is set up, there's not a lot of elevation change. There's a lot of high-speed corners, though, and these guys are having to muscle that car around. We talked about yesterday, Phil and I were watching, practice sessions. They come through that last complex, 10, 11, 12, and their car is going sideways. And you mentioned it, with USF2000, you got to get that nose pointed in the right direction, or you're off the course in a heartbeat.
The amazing thing about that corner, I know we always say, right, when you're at a racetrack like this, work your way around the track. You're going to watch from some of the grandstands, but go to turn 1. Go to the inside of turn 1. Make sure you go down to 10, 11, and 12 because you watch these guys throwing these cars into 10, 11. When they get into 11, they're throwing up over the curb in turn 10. You got to get the car rotated in 11 because it's not planted. You want the thing to start to rotate and kind of turn direction because you got to roll back on the throttle and you got to be pointed in the right direction and not at the wall on the outside of the corner. That's how crucial it is. Less than 4 minutes remaining. Another couple of other drivers diving into pit lane. Louis Foster's gone to P1. Foster to the top of the box for Exclusive Autosport, a 108.247. A driver you're going to be watching here. We're on red. We have a red flag. There's an issue on the racetrack. Everyone coming to pit lane. So there's potentially a driver off the racetrack. Our production crew trying to scan around the track to find out what has happened. But indeed, we have a driver off the track somewhere, or at least the red flag is out. Not exactly sure why at this point here. Yeah, potentially a driver coming onto the front straightaway in the number 5. That would be Marcos Flack, the Australian driver for Jay Howard Driver Development, who made his debut here during what is kind of an off time for his European racing at Worldwide Technology Raceway. Had a great run into the top 10. We think that it could be Flack off the track. Everyone else coming into pit lane. And this is interesting because there's only, well, again, like we said, so red flag time right now. We shut down the green flag time, so we still have 4 minutes remaining. So we may end up having 3 laps when they come back out onto the racetrack. But again, some kind of an issue on track right now. Foster with the fastest lap, a 108.247. Reese Gold currently second. Kiko Porto in third. Nolan Siegel fourth. And Anam Ahmed rounding out the top 5. Gold in second and Siegel in fourth. The 2 primary contenders, actually the only contenders left to try to fight Foster. But again, as I said, Louis only needs a top 10 finish in race number 1 or any of the races here this weekend to be able to win this championship. So Gold and Siegel really with no shot at it. Foster's going to eventually lock this thing down, but they are still pushing hard as the cream rising to the top here in qualifying. Jack William Miller in the 6th position. Yuvan Sundarmurthy in 7th. Salvador De Alba in 8th. 9th is Bajoy Garg, and 10th is Jonathan Brown, a former Formula Ford Festival winner. And they'll bring this up for you, Phil. Here's an interesting thing. Normally, as we said, drivers in this category come through karting. They work their way into potentially a Formula 1600 or now our USF Junior Series, and then coming through the road to Indy. Well, Salvador De Alba, a young driver I got a chance to watch in karting when he was a kid, did a tremendous job in the 80cc junior class, but he's Mexican, and he runs down for Michelle Jourdain's team. He runs in the NASCAR Mexico Series and the Super Copa Series. So normally this guy's hustling around a 3,200-pound stock car, and instead we throw him behind the wheel of this nimble Indy Pro. He's really got comfortable throughout the season, but, we've talked about drivers making transitions. I've been so impressed with him, Phil, over the last year, this season, because he's really finally got it. Because, driving a big stock car, man, is not the same as driving a Formula car.
Whole different.
You can get him together with Jimmy Johnson to talk about that for sure, too, I would think, right?
Yeah. Talking to Jimmy, too, we were talking about that yesterday. His transition, yes, and yes, he's improved, but he mentioned so different from an Indy car to the success in a Cup car.
Everything's so different in the way the car transitions into all the corners, the body weight movement. Obviously, you don't have that kind of a body roll that we have in these more stiffly sprung race cars here. So, indeed, still on the red flag and not exactly sure why. We haven't been able to pick up the car on track that potentially has an issue. They may have got him back to pit lane now. So they'll just make sure the track is cleaned up. Of course, the AMR safety crew, the IndyCar safety crew, the absolute best in the business. And they make sure we get back on track quickly. There's potential. Yeah, I think it was Marcos Flack. I'm getting some notes here from one of my spotters. Back to pit lane, we're being told for Marcos Flack. The Aussie was the driver who had the issue.
Yeah, it looked like there was an issue right along the front straight. Again, camera crews are out there working. Everybody's set up. We're ready to go for the full weekend. But occasionally a car will get into a spot where you can't get a
Yeah,
visual on
indeed.
it. So
And we use lockdown cameras for
Yep.
for our crews, so we just have the cameras that are locked down. They're not moving around, so we do the best we can. There you go. Green's been shown once again. Drivers heading back out onto the racetrack, and this will be interesting because now they've kind of got to gap themselves here right now because you don't want to be too close. You can see the drivers taking their time coming out onto the straightaway because you don't want to get locked up behind a driver potentially slower than you. Now, if you're potentially mid-pack and the guy in front of you is quicker, maybe you're happy right now because he'll be that rabbit. Because a lot of the drivers, and they'll tell you this, I'm a little bit quicker when I have somebody to chase. You know, when you're out there by yourself, you're hitting your own marks, turn in, apex, exit point. But when you have that driver in front of you who's a little bit quicker, maybe they're rolling a bit more corner speed into the apex. So you'll push a bit harder, having that rabbit, that kind of model of what to do. So that can benefit one of the drivers potentially here right now, as we're likely going to have, I think, 3 more green flag laps before we cap this thing off.
yeah, that makes a great point. They're not necessarily in the complete tow, but they're in that cleaner air back behind where they can get that mix a little bit dirty. That hole has been punched in the atmosphere for them, and they're able to kind of pull up on the back bumper. So that is fantastic. You said 3 laps to go.
And I'll say this, Bobby, for me, when I drive, I don't drive enough to be able to qualify really well, right? Because I'm always trying to find what that edge is. But if I have somebody in front of me who's rolling the center real quick, and I'm like, oh, okay, I can do that as well, I'll do that. And that's some of the drivers, maybe like a Marcos Flack or some of the guys that are maybe in their first year, have never been here before. Remember those 6 guys that have been here before? You'll see how much they send it in turn number 10. That driver's going to say, hey, if he can do it, I can do it. And once you get in there and it sticks, then you potentially see them find some more speed. And all it takes, again, 1/10 of a second. You're going to move up a spot, 2/10, 3 spots. If you look here, Anam Ahmed is a 1/2 a second back, but you go all the way down to just 2/10 or 3/10 back to Jordan Missick in 12th. If he finds 2/10 of a second, he's P5. That's how close it is. Foster, Gold, Porto, Siegel, and Ahmed, the top 5. As time winding down, less than 2 minutes remaining in qualifying for Indy Pro 2000. Of course, fastest lap set in the grid for race number 1. Second fastest lap will be the initial lap used for both race 2 and race 3. Drivers do have the ability to go quicker in race 2, or rather quicker in race 1. If they go faster than their second fastest lap in qualifying, they can use that time instead for the grid for race number 2. Same thing for race 2. They can use that quicker time in race 2 for race number 3. That may pull some strategy out. Some teams may elect, if they have a driver at the back of the pack, to bolt on the sticker tires in race 2 to go faster and get a better starting spot for race number 3. Now, of course, they're going to salvage the fact those tires aren't going to be great for race number 3, but this is a track position facility. It's not the easiest facility to pass on, so the better you are in qualifying, the further up the grid you start, Bobby, you're probably going to finish a lot better.
Do these guys start on the same tires that they qualify on?
Well, this is it. No, they don't. They can play around with that, right? They get 4 sets of tires for a triple header, so they're able to kind of play what they are back and forth. Some guys will hold potentially a set for the final race. If you're up front, you may use those fresh tires. Sometimes in qualifying, they'll put 2 fresh sets of tires on. Some teams could have came out with fresh tires in the very first session, maybe did 4 or 5 laps, 3 laps, scuff them in, get a feel for it, and then make the change and go back to fresh tires again. So go back-to-back sticker tires to make sure the car is the best it can be for that, that final qualifying run here.
Makes total sense. I'm excited. We're now just about an hour away, a little bit less than, getting the first race of the weekend kicked off with USF2000, but the action we've seen already, guys locking up tires, locking up brakes, throwing their cars off the track. It's going to be a fun Friday. I think that's what we're going to call it. We're going to call it Fun Friday. It's going to be Serious Saturday, and then it's going to be Sunshine Sunday. But
I like that.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm going to call it Hold My Breath Friday because I don't know about you guys, but coming into Festival
yeah.
Chicane, I'll be holding my breath at the start. Checker flag's out right now. Louis Foster still on top by over 1/10 of a second. This would be huge for him. Not only another bonus point, but to start on the front row. If he's able to get cleanly out in the first or second, that's all he's going to do. I could predict that potentially Gold will win this race, the first race, because unless Louis gets out front and holds it, he's not going to worry about somebody getting by him. And all he needs to do is finish in the top 10 to get the championship. I bet you Louis would like to get this thing locked in race number 1, celebrate on the podium. But hey, what better way to win the championship than exclamation point with a victory here in race number 1. He's on top right now. Foster a 108.2. Gold does not go quicker, so he does not displace Foster from P1. Siegel, Porto, and Ahmed 2, 3, 4, and 5 across the line. They do not go quicker. Louis Foster, your point leader, his first time at Portland International Raceway, is going to set it on the pole for race number 1. The exclusive Autosport Copart sponsor, Machina 108.247. over a tenth quicker than Reese Gold and Nolan Siegel, and that's it right there. There's your top 3 in points. Cream always rises to the top. Foster, Gold, and Siegel qualify as they sit in the points. Kiko Porto, though, very good run for the rookie, up to 4th. Anam Ahmed in 5th. Josh Green 6th. Jack William Miller 7th. Yuvan Sundarmurthy 8th. Salvador De Alba 9th, and in his second race in Indy Pro 2000, first on a road course for Bajoy Garg, the Californian. In 10th position ahead of Jonathan Brown, Jordan Missig, Braden Eves, Lindsey Brewer, and Marcos Flack. And I'll tell you this, Lindsey Brewer, 25-year-old young lady, did a bunch of karting, some skip barber racing, jumping into Indy Pro 2000. She started the weekend 3 seconds off her first session, dropped it down to 2.5. She is 1 second behind. She found so much pace, and we've seen that in all the races she's done. I just want to throw this out here because if you're a young lady trackside, she's the only young lady that we have right now in the road to Indy, and what an impressive drive again. She found so much speed. Started with us at Indianapolis, also raced Road America and Toronto, did the oval as well. A Worldwide Technology Raceway, 150 miles an hour on the back straightaway. Her first ever race on the oval. She has found 2 seconds already within a second of our top running driver, Louis Foster. Brewer with exclusive Autosport, C4 energy on the side of the car. What a great performance for her.
That's a great story. And the fact that she's comfortable, right?
Yeah.
We talked about none of these people, or a lot of these people, especially you and Indy Pro 2000, we have 6 drivers, you said, had previous experience at Portland International Raceway. To be able to find 2 seconds speed-wise tells me that she got comfortable real quick in that car and has a feel for the track.
And the talent is there, right? She
Yep.
has the ability. All she needs to do is more seat time. We hope to see her for a full season next year, some off-season testing, and I think that Lindsay's going to be a driver we'll see in the top 10. She has designs on potentially getting to the 500, right? That's the idea. I want to make it to the Indy 500. Her next step would be Indy Lights, potentially in 2 years from now, but great to see her find more speed. And again, huge for Louis Foster for exclusive Autosport, looking to clinch this championship in race number 1. Would love to stand on top of the podium, not only with the race-winning trophy, but also that championship trophy, because that trophy comes along with $614,000. So
Not a bad
solid.
way
Not
to
bad
start
at all,
your
right?
weekend.
There you go, folks. Foster, Gold, Siegel, and Porto, your front 2 rows for the first of 2 races we'll have here this afternoon at the Grand Prix of Portland. Thank you for tuning in, everyone, to Road to Indy TV. Again, we'll be back. Lots of racing still to go. On behalf of everybody from Road to Indy and Anderson Promotions, my name's Rob Howden. Bye for now.